They called my name. Loud, clear, like it was just another file in a stack. I stood up slow. My knees don't like sudden moves anymore. I looked around, hoping someone might be there. A familiar face, anyone. But the benches were empty. No lawyer beside me, no family in the back, not even a neighbor. Just eyes. Watching, judging, like they'd already decided I was guilty before I said a word. I'm 76. I've lived through wars, buried brothers, stood in front of generals, but nothing feels heavier than standing here alone. This wasn't how I thought my days would end. Quiet, invisible, and misunderstood. I kept my back straight, just like I was taught. Doesn't matter if you're afraid, you don't show it. But the truth is, I wasn't scared. I was ashamed. Not of what they accused me of. I didn't do it. But of how far I'd fallen. From a respected soldier to a man who couldn't even afford a lawyer. They say I started a fight outside the shelter, that I grabbed a kid and tried to hurt him. But I didn't. I was stopping him. He had a weapon. I did what I've always done. Stepped in when others froze. But none of that matters here. Not without someone to say it for me. My hands trembled. Not because I was nervous, but because I finally realized I wasn't just being tried for that day. I was being forgotten for everything that came before it. They look at me like I'm just some tired old man with nowhere to go. Wrinkled coat, worn-out boots, a little slow on the steps. That's all they see. They don't see what I was, or maybe still am, somewhere deep down. They don't see the soldier who jumped out of planes at night. The one who carried bleeding kids across open ground while rounds cracked overhead. The one who stayed behind so others could get out. I gave 32 years to this country. Not just boots on the ground service, but heart, blood, bone. I've buried friends I couldn't save. I've written letters to mothers who would never see their sons again. I've trained hundreds of young recruits, showed them how to survive, how to stay human in the middle of chaos. I taught them honor isn't just something you wear, it's something you live. But none of that matters now. Not to them. Now I'm just another case, a disruption, a burden, something that slows down their paperwork. The same people I once protected now look through me like I'm furniture, or worse, like I'm dangerous. I don't want medals, never did. I just wanted to be useful, to feel like I still had a role, a purpose, something bigger than myself. But here I am, invisible, forgotten. And inside, a voice keeps rising, louder each day. I'm still that man. I didn't disappear. I'm right here, but no one hears it. Not yet. He was just a kid, barely grown, shirt too big for him, rage bubbling just under the surface. The kind that doesn't come from hate, but from fear. I saw it before the metal bar even swung. Another man stood nearby, shouting back. Tensions high. Then the swing came fast. Everyone stepped back. I stepped forward. I caught his arm mid-swing, locked it down, and held him still. Years of training kicked in before I could think. My voice stayed low, steady. You're okay. Breathe. Just breathe. His chest heaved, then slowed. He looked at me, confused, then ashamed. He mumbled, sorry, eyes wide like a boy who knew he'd crossed a line but didn't know how to come back from it. When the police arrived, I was still holding his wrist, making sure he didn't do anything stupid. He bolted as soon as the sirens came close. They saw me crouched beside the injured man and didn't hesitate. They shouted commands. I raised my hands. Didn't matter. They were already pulling my arms behind my back. Tight. No questions, no explanations, just zip ties and hard glares. I waited for someone to speak up. The man I stopped, the one I helped, the bystanders. But no one said a word. Maybe they didn't understand what they'd seen. Maybe they didn't want to get involved. And just like that, I wasn't the one who stopped the fight. I was the threat. They sit there in clean suits, flipping pages like they already know how this ends. The prosecutor calls me aggressive, says I resisted. His words are calm, sharp, practiced, like bullets that never miss. He doesn't look at me, not really, just past me, through me, like I'm already stamped and filed. The judge barely glances up. She asks questions in a tone that makes the answers feel useless. The defense table beside me is empty. No one showed up to speak for me. Public defender quit that morning, overworked, underpaid, didn't even bother to call. I keep my hands folded, my back straight. It's all I have left to control. My uniform's long gone. No ribbons, no rank, just me in second-hand clothes with dried blood in the seams. A tag on the folder says, "Defendant," and that's who I am to them. Nothing more. The courtroom hums with quiet chatter, lawyers whispering, keys tapping, the judge sighing. But to me, it sounds like something else. The stillness before the first shot, the moment when breath holds and hearts brace. I've known this silence. Not in court, but in jungles and deserts. There, at least, you knew who the enemy was. Here? I'm not even sure what side I'm on anymore. I scan the faces. No recognition. No understanding. And I wonder, has anyone in this room ever watched a man bleed out while holding his hand? Ever carried someone out under fire? Or do they just read reports and call it just... Some nights I still see their faces. Dirty, sweating, full of nerves, but alive. Kids, really. I trained them to keep each other breathing, to move like a unit, to care without showing it. Some made jokes to mask the fear. Some just stared at the dirt. But every one of them listened when it mattered. There was this one, Johnson, I think, from Detroit. Always late to morning formation, boots barely tied, uniform wrinkled, drove me crazy. But one day, after a rough exercise, I made him squad leader. Didn't tell anyone why. Just handed him the clipboard and said, "Your turn." He blinked at me like I'd handed him a grenade. 2 days later, he ran the cleanest drill we'd ever had, pulled me aside after and said, "No one's ever trusted me like that before." I nodded, didn't say much. But I remember. Some didn't come back. Letters written to mothers, folded flags, silence that stretches for years. I remember those too. I still hear the laughter in the barracks sometimes, feel the slap on the back after a good march. They never leave you, the ones you serve with. You carry them even when they're gone. I wonder if they'd recognize me now. This old man in the courtroom, worn boots, calloused hands. Probably not. But I remember them. Everyone. I remember who I was with them, what we stood for. That doesn't wash out with time, doesn't fade. They were my boys. I made sure they came home. I heard the boots before I saw him, sharp, deliberate, no hesitation in the step. Every head turned. The room shifted. Something about the rhythm made people straighten in their seats. I stayed still, eyes forward, not expecting anything. Not anymore. But then he walked right past the gallery, past the benches, didn't glance at the prosecutor, didn't acknowledge the judge. He walked straight to my table and sat beside me. His uniform looked freshly pressed, silver oak leaves on the shoulders, medals across his chest that weren't for show. His hands rested calmly on the table. No folder, no notes, no hesitation. Just presence. Strong, silent, certain. He nodded once toward me. Not the kind you give to strangers, but the kind you give to someone who's earned it. I kept staring forward, unsure if I was dreaming. Couldn't make sense of it. The judge tilted her head, pen frozen mid-note. The prosecutor looked like someone had cut the script out from under him. A few people in the back stood up just to see better. Still, the man beside me said nothing. Didn't need to. His sitting there, choosing that chair, this table, spoke louder than any defense I could have given. My hands didn't shake, but I felt something shift inside me. Like a wall that had held too long finally had someone on the other side. I didn't know who he was. Not yet. But he knew me. That much was clear. And for the first time in that courtroom, I wasn't alone. "Name?" the judge asked. He rose slowly, standing tall like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Colonel Marcus Lane, United States Army," he said, voice calm, steady, every syllable crisp. He didn't need notes. He just looked at the court, then pointed to me. "He saved my life," he said. "Twice." Everyone went still. He spoke about jungle nights, missions no one talks about men bleeding out in the dark. He said there was a time, 1983, when the mission fell apart and it was chaos. Communications down, extraction gone, and I had carried him. He said that out loud, 11 miles, wounded myself, not stopping once. He told jokes to keep me conscious, held pressure on my wound with one hand, and held his weapon with the other, he said. He told the court how I stayed behind enemy lines an extra 2 hours just to carry another man who couldn't walk, how I refused to leave any of them behind. He paused. His voice cracked once. He taught me what leadership meant, what it means to bring everyone home. Then he looked right at me. There was something familiar in his eyes, a look I'd seen before but couldn't place. "You don't remember me, do you?" he said, smiling. "Detroit. Always late. You made me squad leader one day, thought I'd mess it up, but I didn't. You taught me how to stand straight." It hit me like a wave. Johnson. That kid I never forgot. Just didn't know he'd become this. The room went quiet, like someone had flipped a switch. The judge leaned back, folding her arms, eyes fixed on the papers in front of her, but clearly thinking something deeper. The prosecutor sat still, no more smirks, no more confident words. He was silent now. Whispers started spreading, soft at first, then louder. Reporters scribbled notes fast, cameras focused on me. Suddenly, I wasn't just some old man sitting alone. They pulled out my records, medals I'd forgotten I even had, missions no one talked about anymore, decades of service etched in every line. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, not as a troublemaker, not as a vagrant, but as a soldier. The kind of soldier who stood tall, who carried more than just gear on his back. The judge cleared her throat, breaking the silence. "Mr. Pierce," she said slowly, "you should have had a lawyer from the start. You deserved more than this." She glanced at the prosecutor, then back at me. "You should have had a parade." Then the words I'd been waiting for. Charges dismissed. Case closed. I blinked, the weight on my shoulders lifting a little. The room shifted again, not just in air, but in respect. My name wasn't just a docket number anymore. It was a story of honor, of sacrifice. I was finally recognized, not just as a man, but as a soldier. After the court cleared, Marcus didn't just walk away. He stayed with me outside, quiet for a moment, then said, "You should speak at the Veterans Seminar next month." I was surprised, almost didn't answer. "We need you," he added. Not a request, more like a command, one with respect behind it. He offered me a ride home. In the car, we talked like old friends catching up after years apart. I told him about the nights I still woke up sweating, the things no one ever asked about. He listened, nodding, understanding without judgment. For the first time in a long time, I felt heard. The next few weeks changed everything. I started meeting young officers, fresh faces full of questions about war, about pain, about what comes after the battle's end. They wanted to learn from someone who lived it, not just read it in books. I told them about the scars nobody sees, the battles inside us that never stop. I taught them how to recognize trauma in others and how to be better leaders, better people. I never sought attention. I never wanted to be a hero. But now, people listen. They don't just hear my words, they feel them. And it's not because I shouted or demanded respect, it's because I served. I stood for something real. And that made all the difference. Marcus didn't leave after the courtroom emptied. He stayed beside me, quiet at first. Then he said, "You need to share your story. There's a seminar next month for veterans. We need you there." I almost laughed. Me, speaking? But he looked at me like he meant it, no joking. He gave me a ride home. On the way, we talked about the things I hadn't told anyone, the nightmares, the weight of memories, the loneliness. He didn't interrupt or judge. He just listened, like I mattered. In the weeks after, I started meeting young officers, eager and full of questions. They wanted to understand what war leaves behind, the things textbooks don't teach. I told them about invisible wounds, about strength in vulnerability, about how to spot a brother or sister silently struggling. I never wanted the spotlight. I wasn't looking for praise or medals, but people began to listen, not because I raised my voice, but because I had been there, because I'd lived it. Now, I teach. I help others carry the burden without breaking. That's the difference. Not the medals, not the ceremonies, but the stories we share. The understanding we build. That's how we heal, how we move forward. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm part of something again. Not just a forgotten soldier, but a man who still matters. Life taught me silence carries weight no one sees. The quiet moments between words, those are the ones that matter most. That day, I wasn't just alone in the courtroom. A single seat beside me changed the course of everything. It wasn't about rank or medals. It was about being remembered, about someone choosing to stand with me when no one else would.